That tray's perfect for you, the flight attendant said with a smirk, sliding a plain sandwich onto my tray in seat 2A, while the men around me got gourmet meals on silver platters. She had no idea who she was dealing with. A few hours later, once we landed, I made a single phone call. Fire the entire crew. Immediately. Let's just say, they all learned what happens when you treat a woman in a gray suit like she doesn't belong. As my town car pulled up to Seattle-Tacoma, I straightened the lapel of my blazer. I'm Nina Wallace, CEO of Wallace Technologies, one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the country, but you wouldn't know it by looking at me. At 45, I've gotten pretty good at flying under the radar. That morning's flight to San Francisco wasn't just business. It was the lead-up to the biggest move of my career, sealing a $3.1 billion deal to acquire our top competitor. A deal that would flip the entire industry on its head. Your documents, Miss Wallace, my assistant Lucas said, handing over a sleek portfolio. And don't forget, the board's waiting for you at SFO at 2:15 p.m. I gave him a nod, slipping the folder into my leather tote. Thanks, David. I'll see you tomorrow. While the driver pulled my carry-on from the trunk, I glanced at my phone. There was a message from Gordon Hale, the CEO of Meridian Airlines. We'd scheduled dinner for next week. His airline had handled executive transport for my company for years, and with the kind of money we brought in, our account meant a lot to them. Funny thing, we'd never actually met face-to-face. Inside the terminal, I skipped the long security line and headed straight for the premium access gate. The attendant barely glanced at my boarding pass before waving me through with a polite, "Enjoy your flight, ma'am." He said it almost on autopilot, already turning his attention to the person behind me in line. I didn't take it personally, not anymore. I've gotten used to that kind of polite dismissal. Back in the early days of my career, it used to sting how men in suits were treated like royalty the moment they walked in, while I had to prove myself over and over again just to be seen. Now, I almost find it useful. There's something powerful about being overlooked. You get to see people as they really are, when they think no one of importance is paying attention. The premium lounge was its usual scene, full of business types, the air buzzing with half-loud conversations about stocks and golf handicaps. Most of the room was filled with men in expensive suits, owning the space like they built it. A few women were scattered in, some mimicking that same loud, self-assured energy, while others were quietly focused on their screens. I found myself a quiet spot off to the side, ordered a sparkling water, and pulled out my notes. The acquisition paperwork still needed one last read-through before tomorrow's big announcement. I was so deep into the fine print that I almost missed the boarding call. Heading toward the gate, I spotted the cabin crew welcoming passengers. The lead attendant, a blonde with a flawless smile, was busy chatting it up with an older man in a sharp navy suit. "Mr. Granger, so wonderful to have you back. We've got your favorite scotch waiting for you," she cooed. When I stepped forward, her demeanor shifted instantly. Her name tag read Erica. She gave me a quick nod. "Boarding pass?" she asked, her cheerful tone gone, replaced by the kind of brisk professionalism saved for people you don't plan on remembering. I handed her my first-class ticket. She scanned it, returned it without even looking me in the eye, and said, "Seat 2A. Then she looked right past me. "Down the aisle, to your right." Once on the plane, I tucked my carry-on away and settled into my window seat. First class started filling up fast, mostly older men in their 50s and 60s, with a few fresh-faced execs sprinkled in. From my seat, I watched each one of them get a personal greeting from the flight crew. "Good morning. Mr. Whitman, welcome back. Champagne to start. And Mr. Caldwell, it's been a few weeks. How was Zurich?" I sat back and quietly took it all in. Nobody had offered me a pre-flight drink, not even a glance in my direction, even though my Meridian Airlines profile clearly listed me as a platinum elite. I'd flown over 120,000 miles just in the last year alone. As the final few passengers filed in, a tall man in a sharp gray suit stopped beside my row. "3C, he said with a friendly, polished smile, motioning to the aisle seat next to mine. "Looks like we're C-mates today." The cufflinks peeking out from under his sleeve were monogrammed. "Ethan Caldwell." He got comfortable right away and flagged down a passing flight attendant. "Erica, always a pleasure," he said, like they were catching up at a country club. I turned my focus back to my documents. I already had a feeling this flight was going to be eye-opening, though probably not in the way the crew expected. By the time we pushed back from the gate and the safety demo wrapped up, I had my papers tucked away and my attention on the cabin instead. Erica and another attendant moved through first class, passing out hot towels. "For you, Mr. Caldwell," Erica said with a little flourish, holding out the steaming towel like it was a gift. "Watch out, it's hot." When she reached me, she dropped the towel on my tray table without saying a word, already pivoting toward the next passenger. I wiped my hands slowly, watching as she leaned over to chat warmly with the man across the aisle. It wasn't that I expected any special favors, but the gap in basic courtesy? That stood out. Once we hit cruising altitude, the cabin service kicked off. Erica started at the front row, tablet in hand and smile intact. "Good morning, gentlemen. For lunch today, we have a seared salmon with quinoa, a premium Angus beef burger, or a gourmet chicken wrap? And what can I get you to drink? I listened as she made her way down the cabin, keeping the same upbeat tone for every man she spoke to. My neighbor Ethan went with the beef burger and a scotch on the rocks. Excellent choice, Mr. Caldwell, she said, beaming. Then she got to me. No smile. No eye contact. Just business. What would you like? Her voice was flat. What would you like? Nina gave a polite smile. Could you tell me what the lunch options are? Erica's mouth tightened, just slightly. We've got a sandwich or a wrap left, she replied shortly. Nina lifted an eyebrow. I thought there was also salmon and beef? Those are limited, Erica snapped. We're out. But out of the corner of her eye, Nina saw another male passenger, one who'd boarded after her, being served the salmon. She didn't say anything, just made a quiet mental note. I'll take the wrap then. And a sparkling water, please. We'll serve shortly, Erica said, already walking away without a word of acknowledgement. A moment later, Ethan leaned slightly toward her. First time up in first class? He asked casually, though his tone had just a hint of condescension. Not exactly, Nina replied with a faint smile. I fly quite a bit. Well, here's a tip, he said, as if he were doing her a favor. Always book the kosher meal ahead of time. It's better than the standard, and they can't run out of it since it's reserved. Nina nodded, still polite. Thanks for the suggestion. When the drinks came around, Nina noticed Ethan got his scotch served in a crystal glass, the label on the bottle a high-end brand. Her sparkling water, on the other hand, came in a basic plastic cup. No lemon slice. She quietly noted that every other passenger had received a glass garnish. The man sitting to her right, an older executive who had boarded last, got a pour of top-shelf bourbon, a dish of warm nuts, and a personal check-in from the purser himself. Then came the meal service, and the contrast became even more obvious. Ethan's tray looked like it belonged at a five-star restaurant. A premium beef burger on real china, garnished with microgreens, accompanied by golden truffle fries. A linen napkin and polished metal cutlery completed the setup. When Erica brought Nina her tray, she didn't say a word, barely looked at her. Instead of the wrap she'd requested, she was handed a plain turkey sandwich on a flimsy paper plate, a bag of chips on the side. The cutlery? Cheap plastic, wrapped in a thin paper napkin. This isn't what I ordered, Nina said evenly, keeping her voice composed. Erica offered her a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. We're out of wraps too. This tray suits you just fine. Then she turned and walked off before Nina could reply. From the row behind, Nina heard a male passenger being offered both the wrap and the salmon. The very items she'd just been told were unavailable. She quietly pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. Her fingers moved quickly as she began typing. This wasn't the first time she'd faced treatment like this while traveling, but today, it was so obvious it almost felt like a joke. End of all days, with this airline and at this exact moment, the timing couldn't have been worse for them. Nina slowly unwrapped the sandwich, maintaining her calm. The bread was on the edge of stale, and the filling was barely there. Nothing at all like the high-end meals being served around her. She took a small, measured bite and looked ahead, noticing how Erica was still doting on Ethan. How's the burger, Mr. Caldwell? Can I bring you another scotch? Excellent as always, Erica. Yes, another would be perfect, Ethan replied smoothly. Erica lit up, smiling brightly at him before turning away, completely ignoring me, even though I was right there. It was like there was an invisible wall between seats 3C and 3D. I took another sip of my water and kept quietly updating the notes on my phone, every detail recorded with care. About 20 minutes into the meal service, I noticed a small cluster of flight attendants near the galley. Erica's voice carried just enough for me to catch snippets. Always complaining, shouldn't even be up here anyway. A quick glance confirmed what I already suspected. She was nodding in my direction as she whispered to another crew member. That second attendant peeked over at me, then quickly looked away once she realized I'd seen her. Meanwhile, Ethan had started chatting with the man across the aisle. Their conversation flowed confidently, talk of golf trips, recent business deals, and mutual connections at some country club. Eventually, they exchanged business cards and made plans to meet the following week. I stayed quiet, listening, taking it all in. Then I pressed the call button. It stayed lit for nearly 5 full minutes before Erica finally showed up. Her face said everything. I was an inconvenience. Yes? She asked curtly, her tone clipped and cold. I didn't receive a dessert, I said evenly, though I'd clearly seen other first-class passengers enjoying chocolate mousse. Erica forced a smile that didn't touch her eyes. We ran out. Anything else? Before I could answer, she turned to leave. But as she did, her elbow accidentally bumped my water cup, sending it tumbling across my tray. Oh, she gasped, the surprise in her voice clearly staged. So sorry about that. She reached for a flimsy napkin and dropped it onto the spill, barely making an effort as the water dripped off the tray, straight onto my gray slacks. If you need anything else, let me know, she added breezily, already walking away and leaving me with the mess. Ethan glanced over, raised his eyebrows, and gave a half-hearted, tough luck. before turning back to his conversation. I calmly blotted at my damp clothes and added another line to my notes. I've dealt with subtle bias before. You don't make it from junior programmer to CEO without growing thick skin. But this was bold. When the head purser walked by a few minutes later, I raised a hand gently to get his attention. Excuse me, may I have your name, please? He looked caught off guard, but stayed professional. Brian Lowell, ma'am. Is something wrong? I can help with that. Not at the moment, Mr. Lowell, I interrupted gently. I'd just like your name for my records. His expression shifted slightly, surprised, maybe even a bit confused, but he gave me a polite nod and continued on down the aisle. From where I sat, I could see Erica moving through the cabin with ease now, pouring freshly brewed coffee for the businessmen around me. Suddenly, those missing chocolate biscotti had magically reappeared. When Ethan got his coffee, it was served in a porcelain cup, the biscotti resting neatly on a little plate beside it. Erica made a very deliberate effort not to look in my direction. The message couldn't have been clearer. Some passengers get premium treatment, and in her eyes, I wasn't one of them. I quietly closed my notes app and opened my email. Composing a new message, I addressed it to my assistant, David. Subject, immediate follow-up. Body, David, please collect the direct contact details for Gordon Hale's office. I'll need to speak with him as soon as we land. Priority, immediate. With that sent, I leaned back in my seat, outwardly calm, even as my mind calculated every step I'd be taking once we touched down in San Francisco. The rest of the flight unfolded just as predictably. When the drink cart came around again, Erica somehow managed to skip my row entirely, though she made sure to offer Ethan another round of scotch with her usual warmth. I pressed the call button again, and this time, a different flight attendant appeared. Her body language told me Erica had likely warned her about the so-called difficult passenger in 3C. I asked for a coffee. It arrived after a noticeable wait, served in a flimsy paper cup. No milk, even though I'd requested it. The coffee itself? Barely warm. I didn't complain. I just noted it, like everything else. About an hour before landing, the purser returned to hand out hot towels to help passengers freshen up. When he got to my seat, he hesitated, glancing back toward the galley, where Erica stood watching. Would you care for a hot towel, ma'am? He asked, voice neutral, but his face gave away the uncertainty. Yes, thank you, I replied smoothly. Yes, thank you, I said with a small, composed smile. As the purser moved on, I noticed Erica slide up beside him in the galley. She leaned in close, whispering something under her breath. Whatever she said made him glance back at me, and the unease in his expression returned instantly. Beside me, Ethan had drifted off, his half-finished scotch still dangling loosely from one hand. Across the aisle, two businessmen chatted with the relaxed boldness of people who assumed everyone around them was just background noise. Did you hear about Wallace Technologies? One of them asked. Yeah, the other replied. Word is they're announcing some major acquisition tomorrow. That's Nina Wallace's company, right? She's been shaking things up lately. Didn't think she had it in her when she first took over. She's ruthless, from what I hear. Sharp as hell. Doesn't tolerate fools. I kept my face neutral, though a small, private smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. They didn't recognize me, no surprise there. My name carried weight in boardrooms, but my face? Hardly anyone knew it. I'd gone out of my way to keep it that way. No press photos, no interviews, no keynote speeches unless absolutely necessary. Staying in the background had been one of my greatest strengths. When people don't know who you are, they show you who they are. As the plane began its descent into SFO, the crew started prepping the cabin for landing. I closed my laptop and secured my bag, catching Erica's eye as she passed by. She looked away quickly, the recognition in her face unmistakable now. She'd heard the conversation. She knew who I was. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain's voice came overhead. As we begin our descent into San Francisco's John F. Kennedy International Airport, please ensure your seatbelts are fastened, your tray tables stowed, and your seats are in the upright position. The plane dipped through the clouds, revealing the vast sprawl of the city below. I looked out the window, running through the plan in my head. The official acquisition announcement would happen tomorrow morning, but there was something else I needed to deal with first. As we touched down, a flight attendant thanked everyone for flying Meridian Airlines. The moment the seatbelt sign turned off, the usual scramble began, people lunging for their bags as if they might vanish. Ethan woke with a jolt, checked his watch, and started gathering his things. He gave me a short nod, then turned and joined the crowd without a word. Erica worked her way through the cabin, smiling warmly at each male passenger, thanking them personally and hoping to see them again soon. When she reached my row, she didn't say a word, just gave a stiff nod and kept walking. I stayed seated, letting the rush die down. No reason to fight for space in the aisle. My driver would be waiting, no matter what. And I had a call to make before I even left the terminal. From my seat, I watched Erica laugh at something Ethan said. She had no idea what was coming. Near the exit, the flight attendants seemed to shift into full warm professional mode, but only now that most of the passengers were gone. When the cabin had nearly emptied, I finally rose and gathered my things with calm, deliberate movements. The real work was just about to begin. Out on the jet bridge, passengers poured toward the terminal, the air buzzing with idle chatter and rolling luggage. I walked at my own pace, eyes sharp, watching Erica and the other crew members line up by the aircraft door. They were all smiles and warmth, offering friendly goodbyes, but only to certain passengers. As I approached, I caught Erica's eye. Her smile flickered, then flattened into something blank and rehearsed. "Thank you for flying with us," she said in a tone that barely masked her disinterest, already looking to the next person behind me. I stopped just long enough to make sure she heard me. "I'll be sure to document my experience thoroughly," I said, pleasant on the surface, but with unmistakable steel in my gaze. A flicker of something nervousness, maybe, crossed her face. But it disappeared quickly, replaced by cold professionalism. "Have a nice day, ma'am." Inside the terminal, I skipped the crowds shuffling toward baggage claim and headed instead for the Meridian Platinum Lounge. At the entrance, the attendant scanned my boarding pass. Her eyes widened slightly as the system pulled up my profile. "Miss Wallace," she said, her tone shifting in an instant. "We weren't informed you were traveling with us today. Please, come right in. Would you like me to arrange a private suite?" "That would be perfect, thank you," I said smoothly, noting, not for the first time, how quickly behavior changed once names and status were revealed. Inside the private lounge, I set my bag down, pulled out my phone, and dialed a number I knew by heart. The line barely rang twice before it connected. "David, I've landed. Has Mr. Hale's office responded yet?" "Yes, Miss Wallace. He was definitely surprised by your request for a last-minute meeting. But as luck would have it, he's already here at SFO for a board presentation. He can meet you in 30 minutes. "Perfect. Have him come to Platinum Lounge, private room 3. And Lucas, make sure he brings the crew manifest and the passenger service logs from Meridian Flight 7621, Seattle to San Francisco Airport. Today's flight. Already requested, Miss Wallace." I ended the call and sank into the plush armchair, reviewing the detailed flight notes I'd compiled. Every moment of unequal treatment had been documented precisely, times, exact quotes, specific behaviors. Nothing missed. 20 minutes later, a soft knock at the door interrupted my focus. The lounge attendant stepped in. "Miss Wallace, Mr. Hale has arrived." Gordon Hale entered with the quiet authority of a man used to rooms bending around his presence. Late 60s, silver hair, and a suit that probably cost more than most coach seats, he extended his hand with a polished smile. "Miss Wallace, a pleasure to finally meet you in person. I have to admit, your urgent meeting request caught me off guard." I stood and shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for making the time," I said evenly. "Please, Mr. Hale, have a seat," I said, motioning to the chair across from me. Gordon sat down with an air of polite curiosity, though a faint crease in his brow gave away his confusion. "I understand you were a passenger on our Seattle to San Francisco flight today," he began. "I hope everything met your expectations?" "Far from it," I said evenly, sliding my phone across the table toward him. "I've documented a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior from one of your flight attendants, with support from the purser. I'd like you to review it." He picked up the phone, scrolling through my detailed notes. His expression shifted gradually, first confusion, then concern, and finally, something closer to alarm. "This is troubling," he said at last, glancing up at me. "I want to assure you, Miss Wallace, that this is not reflective of the service standards we uphold at Meridian." "I would certainly hope not," I replied coolly, "especially considering Wallace Technologies has been your second-largest corporate client for the past 3 years." I let that hang for a moment before continuing. "Our contract, valued at roughly $19.5 million annually, comes up for renewal next month." The color drained slightly from his face. I wasn't aware. "Not many people connect my name with my face," I said. "That's intentional. It allows me to observe how your employees treat passengers when they assume no one important is watching." I locked eyes with him, unflinching. "Now, Mr. Hale, I'd like to know how you plan to handle this situation, because I assure you, it will be addressed. One way or another." The room had gone still. The quiet pressure of the moment was unmistakable. He set the phone back on the table, his fingers twitching slightly, the weight of the situation clearly settling in. One of Meridian's most valuable clients had just informed him she'd been mistreated. And she had proof. "Miss Wallace," he began, his voice lower now, sincere and rattled. "I want to personally extend my deepest apologies for what you experienced today. It was entirely unacceptable." "I agree," I said plainly. "But I'm not here for apologies, Mr. Hale. I'm here for solutions." He sat up straighter, nodding quickly. "Of course. I've already sent word to have the crew held at the airport. I'll be launching an immediate investigation." "That's a start," I replied. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward him. "You should also be aware that Wallace Technologies isn't the only major client impacted by this pattern of behavior." His eyes narrowed slightly as he leaned in. "My assistant has gathered data suggesting similar complaints, nearly all from senior-level women at other companies with active contracts with Meridian. Gordon's eyes widened as he scanned through the data on the screen. I had no idea this was part of a larger pattern, he murmured. Most discrimination is, I replied evenly, until someone decides to actually confront it. Just then, a knock at the door interrupted us. His assistant stepped in, carrying a folder. The crew manifest and service records you requested, sir. Gordon thanked him, took the documents, and laid them out across the table. Erica Dawson has been with us for 10 years, he said, flipping through the pages. There have been notes in her file, but nothing that ever led to formal disciplinary action. Because the complaints were likely dismissed as one-offs, I said. That ends today. About 35 minutes later, Erica Dawson and Purser Brian Lowell stood in the administrative office at SFO, facing both Gordon Hale and me. Erica's earlier confidence had completely vanished. Her expression turned to stunned disbelief the moment she realized who I was, the quiet woman from 3C, now seated beside her CEO. Miss Dawson, Gordon began, his voice somber. I've reviewed substantial evidence of discriminatory conduct on today's flight, corroborated by multiple passenger reports and your service history. Erica's cheeks flushed. Sir, I can explain. There is no explanation that justifies what I experienced, I said calmly, or what now appears to be an ongoing pattern of behavior. Gordon gave a single, grim nod. Effective immediately, both of you are suspended pending a full investigation. Given the documentation already in hand, I expect this will result in termination. Brian started to object, but Gordon raised a hand firmly. This decision is final. Meridian Airlines has zero tolerance for discrimination of any kind. As Erica and Brian were quietly escorted out of the room, Gordon turned back to me. I'll be launching a full audit of our training and service standards. You have my word, Miss Wallace. I nodded. I'll be following up closely, Mr. Hale. Respect shouldn't depend on whether you recognize the person in front of you. In business and in life, real character is revealed by how we treat people when we don't think they're important. If Nina's story struck a chord with you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from today? Remember, everyone deserves dignity, no matter their appearance or gender. And sometimes, the most powerful person in the room is the one being underestimated.